Hey, welcome. It is Saturday, I think. This is Carnell Knowledge. My name is Tom Carnell. This is one of our special weekend episodes that we do now and again. It seems like we're doing them a lot as of late. Um, uh, we'll see how that goes. Anyway, so what these are special formatted shows that don't fit in with the normal format that I do here on YouTube. My normal format is that I do shows every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, wherein I review, recommend, 5 movies, a book, and then 5 records. This is going to be something a little different. And what today's episode is I'm going to run down first some honorable mentions. Then I'm going to go through a list that I've just kind of loosely compiled of the top 10 most influential comic books. In my life, anyway. As these things go, it usually works where they're highly individual, and my top 10 are not going to be your top 10. So before you start busting my chops in the comments, just remember that. Also remember, as with most top 10 lists, if you ask me this tomorrow or even in an hour, it'll probably be different. But I figure we talk a little bit about comic books. We don't talk about comics a lot on the regular show. And so this is to give us a chance to sort of address that medium of the artistic expression and just go over a couple of things that really had an impact on me. Now, I haven't read comics in a little bit. Most of the time that these comics that I'm going to mention were pulled from is the time that I was working in comic book stores and had been sort of knee deep in all of that. And so forgive that. I'm sure there are things that have come out in the last few years that are fantastic. My friend Django Boren, who runs Comics Place here in Bellingham, Washington, would probably have an entire arm's length list. But these are just for me, and these are just sort of the things that have affected me. It had gone into sort of my makeup and also have influenced the way I perceive the roles of heroes and villains and have they affected my writing and all this other stuff. So that all said, honorable mentions. Let's go from the bottom to the top. It's just like we're going to do the from 10 to 1. The first one, of course, you can't have this discussion without discussing Marvel's Secret Wars and Civil Wars. It's the ultimate this guy versus that guy thing. Can't tell you how many times I was working in comic book stores and you would get into these discussions / arguments about like, could the Hulk beat the Thing and all of that kind of thing. And this kind of put it to the test. There was a lot more soap operatic aspects to it. But yeah, I figured we could mention these and then we could dismiss a lot of those, this guy versus that guy kind of discussions. I thought they were fine enough books. A lot of the latest MCU movies have been culled from this stuff. And they're fine. And they're important because they sort of were the pinnacle of that sort of plot device. So up next, I was talking online with Ryan Ebelt, who's an artist and effects guy and a very knowledgeable cat. And he mentioned Bill Sienkiewicz's Stray Toasters. Now, Stray Toasters is a book that not a lot of people remember, but man, I remember when it came out, it confused everybody. It still confuses me if I go back and look at it. It's Bill Sienkiewicz's art form at the top of his game, where he had just come off of doing things like the Elektra book and this kind of thing, and he's a very stylized look, and now he's writing it, and this thing really reflected that. It confused me. It still confuses me, but it's a beautiful book. I mean, if you know Bill Sienkiewicz, you know that his artwork is really stellar. I also want to include Frank Miller. Frank Miller, I'm going to warn you now, it makes an awful lot of appearances on this this list. we'll get to something about Frank Miller in a minute. Frank Miller's 4-issue Wolverine series. Some of the details were used in the 2013 film The Wolverine, about him going to Japan and the whole thing about him meeting a girl and almost and getting married. Did he get married? I think so. Anyway, fantastic stuff. It's Miller working at the artwork is at his best. I believe it was Chris Claremont who did the artwork or the writing for that, but just great stuff. And the ending was really cool and powerful, and it really sort of solidified Wolverine as a character that everyone loves. Let's see. Hot on the heels of that, we got the John Byrne, Chris Claremont X-Men run. I never got into the X-Men, but it seemed a little, again, soap operatic, but it's an important bit of change. They made a lot of money off of that, and I just remember people coming in and buying like X-Men. And they were fun enough books. They were engaging enough, and there was enough of what I call kicky punchy that that kept my interest. But a lot of it just seemed aimed for angsty teens, and that wasn't me. So there's that. Now we get into some. This is an important thing here. From 1974 to 1983, Steve Englehart, Doug Munch, Paul Gulacy, and their run for Marvel's Master of Kung Fu. Important for me because this sort of happened just after Bruce Lee died, and there was a void. And Master of Kung Fu really filled that void for me. I thought that it was a well-told story, and it involved Kung Fu and martial arts. And so it was singing my song, and so I quite enjoyed it. No list would be complete without Jack Kirby and his New Gods and the Fourth World from DC, around from 1970 to 1973. Kirby always got the short end of the stick on all of this stuff. A lot of the things that we attribute to Stan Lee were really Jack Kirby. There's a whole thing online about how Stan Lee stole everything from Jack Kirby. Kirby was a genius, and his artwork was a little square, but everyone's faces were a little square, but great stuff, just absolutely great stuff. And then our last honorable mention is from 1998. It's Dark Horse and Frank Miller's version of 300. Important because it took classic literature, other than like Classics and Illustrated and the Gold Key books. It took classic literature and sort of made it palatable for a new and modern audience. We've talked on this show before about Stephen Pressfield's Gates of Fire and how that all told the story of the Battle of Thermopylae. But Frank Miller kind of got more shine of it because it was, I think it was because it was a visual thing, and that was the thing that they made the movie of. I still wish that they would make a movie of Gates of Fire, but there you go. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, we'll get to our top 10 in reverse order. Number 10, Frank Miller again. In the run of Daredevil back in '83, he did a single issue book, number 191, called Roulette. It took place after, spoiler, Bullseye had killed Elektra and had wound up in the hospital, and with, I believe it was a broken back. But the issue has to do with Daredevil bringing a gun in, with a story attached to it, into the hospital room, and then him and Bullseye playing Russian roulette as he tells them the story of the gun and about violence, talking about violence and that kind of thing. Virulently anti-gun, this story. Powerful, sad, melancholic, but it is single issue comic writing firing on all cylinders. It is the pinnacle, in my opinion, of that kind of thing. I mean, it's a testament that here we are 40 years later, and I still think about that book on the daily. It's a fantastic book. Again, it's Daredevil 191 from 1983, and it is terrific. I can't say much more about it. If you haven't read it, you should go read it, and if you have read it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Number 9. Another series that didn't get a lot of press, but man, it did affect me. It ran from 1989 to 1992. It was Dave Lupre and Dan Sweetman's DC Piranha Press series, Beautiful Stories for Ugly Children. Essentially, it was a prose thing with illustrations. It wasn't a comic book per se, but man, did it affect the way I looked at storytelling and the way that I looked at comic books. There was talk for a while that this would be made into a film, or at least an animated version of one of the seminal stories called Cotton Candy Autopsy, about a group of clowns that kind of go rogue. But nothing ever came of it, which is too bad. Essentially, every issue was a different story. And again, illustrated throughout, and very weird, very sort of surreal in a lot of ways, and just absolutely terrific, really fantastic. I love that. I spent years looking for Beautiful Stories for Ugly Children number 22, and I finally found it. And my collection was complete. Great stuff. If you haven't read this stuff, you can find it online for a song. Absolutely great. I do hear that both of these guys have gone on to work in Hollywood, which makes no surprise. I heard Dan Sweetman was involved in a lot of the lobby posters for things like Braveheart and Birdman and that kind of thing. So I'm glad to hear that everyone's doing well. But Beautiful Stories for Ugly Children was just fantastic. Let's see, number 8. This will come as no surprise. It ran from Quality Communications in DC from 82 to 89. That's Alan Moore and David Lloyd's V for Vendetta. This book established Alan Moore as a force to be reckoned with as far as the writing goes. It, in many ways, alerted people to the dangers and the problems that we face even today. So good that even the film adaptation was rock solid. I mean, just look around you on the news. How many Guy Fawkes masks do you see? Well, all of that came out of V for Vendetta. A terrific story, a moving story, and visually just spot on. Alan Moore, for me, can be absolutely brilliant, and he can also have me scratching my head. So it's nice that that V for Vendetta is on this list. Speaking of Alan Moore, we're going to go to 1988. Alan Moore and Brian Bolland, Batman: The Killing Joke. I'm a Batman fan. There shouldn't be any question in your mind about that. But it was, Batman was something that I still feel that it's never been dealt with correctly. And there has never been a truly great Batman story told. I have my own thoughts. I'll share them with you. I think that we should take an established Batman story. We should get a good, solid, dark director, and we should give everything over to the the people who are making films like The Raid and Raid Redemption and Ong Bak and The Protector, Born to Defense, and all that kind of thing. Someone who knows action, who can execute a truly jaw-dropping. Just look at the film Chocolate. We talked about that on this series, this show before. Those are jaw-dropping fight scenes. That juxtaposed with a good detective story, which they're kind of doing with the Batman. They're attempting to do it. They call him the world's greatest detective, and the problem is he never detects anything. So that's my thought on it, just because it's an action thing, but it's also a mystery thing. And I don't think they've ever gotten it right. The Killing Joke, helped solidify both of these characters, Batman and the Joker, in audiences' minds, and that ending is fantastic. It was made into an animated feature in 2016. The book is considered a definitive Joker story. IGN called it the third greatest comic in the 20th century. The other two being Dark Knight Returns and Year One, and it would help again solidify the perception of both of those characters in audiences' minds. It's a great book. The artwork is fantastic. Storytelling is great. And again, that ending is the bomb. Number 6, we're going to rest with, here he is again, Frank Miller. Sin City ran on Dark Horse from 1991 to 2000. It's still popping up now and again. There was a film made of it. One was pretty good, one was not. But the important part of Sin City was that it introduced film noir to a whole new audience. Miller here grows not only as an artist because he's completely abandoned the art style that has got him to where he was at the time of beginning this, and it also broadened his horizons as a writer. It was around this time that I interviewed Frank for Carpe Noctem. And you can find that on my Amazon page. There's a Carpe Noctem Interviews book, Volume 2, has a rather extensive interview, and part of that interview is us doing I mentioned an artist's name, and he gives me a from the hip assessment. And good guy, and there is a Christmas issue of Sin City that I think I still have somewhere laying around back there. Just great stuff, very brooding, very cool. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Number 5, Frank Miller again, David Mazzucchelli, Daredevil Born Again from 1986. This was raw Daredevil. It was real. It set the stage for Frank to do Dark Knight Returns, and it was an extension of everything up until then. The story is now being sort of adapted in the Daredevil series on Disney. But just good stuff. Again, I'm a big fan when we take the fantastic characters, because I feel like it's the jagged little pill that we have to accept, that a blind guy is now able to see by sound and jump around off of buildings. That's a big ask. So then having everything around him be grounded in reality makes it so much more potent. And Daredevil Born Again definitely is. Number 4, from 1996, Mark Waid and Alex Ross and the Kingdom Come series. Another important book. Again, gave characters that resided in the fantastic and gave them a grounding. Alex Ross's artwork is breathtaking, as all of Alex Ross's artwork is. But well worth, if you haven't read it, you should. Even if you don't like superheroes, there's a real human side to it that I think is really cool. So yeah, Kingdom Come, great stuff. Number 3, we're going to go with this. More Dave Loupre and Dan Sweetman, The Wasteland. It's a very thin book. There's not much to it. But they're absolutely hilarious, although cold, dark, one-panel comics. Think of The Far Side and think of it with manic depression. It's way, way darker than anything The Far Side ever came up with. There are, one of my favorites is an image of a dog laying dead in the street, and it says the caption is like Phil. It points to 2 fleas on his body, and it says something about Phil and Dan enjoying life's rich pageantry. There was another one of it looks like a cow that's falling through the sky, burning up, and the caption was, "Hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle, and the cow jumped over the moon and immediately burn up on re-entry." That kind of thing. Really, really dark, really, really funny. Good stuff. I don't know how easy this is to get these days, but if you can get your mitts on this, you should. It's absolutely fantastic. We're getting down to the last two. Number 2, Grant Morrison, Dave McKean, Arkham Asylum. A beautiful book. Mine I got years ago, and I even got it signed. It's Batman, but it's in this fantastical kind of dream world of once he goes into, it's a lot like the video game Arkham Asylum, where he goes into Arkham and meets a series of characters that we know, but these aren't the characters that we know. They're much more fully rendered, and they're much more dark and much more twisted. I would later go on to work with Dave McKean. He did a lot of covers for Carpet Nocturne when we were doing that. And there wasn't a single image that he sent us that wasn't just, it was like a treat, or like Christmas. You would open up the file and it would just be this amazingly beautiful piece of work. Arkham Asylum is, again, it's very, very dark. Very dreamlike, very surreal, but absolutely fantastic. And those that know me will not be surprised at my number 1, 1986, Frank Miller again, Dark Knight Returns. Probably the most important comic in my lifetime. It redefined a character that I thought I knew, and it set the tone for all of the cinematic representations of the character ever since then. You don't get Keaton's Batman without Dark Knight Returns. You definitely don't get Christopher Nolan's Batman without Dark Knight Returns. I quote this book like on the daily. There is an animated version out there with Peter Weller as the Dark Knight, and it is really solid, and Peter Weller kills it on that. It's a 2-part animated thing, but it's just really fantastic. What else can I say? I have I was going to grab it, but I didn't. I have a very nice leather bound thing that has not only Dark Knight, but also Year One. And I got that years ago. But Dark Knight Returns doesn't get any better than that. It's the book that I compare all others to. So that's it. 10. Boom, boom. For your Saturday. Let me know in the comments below what your top 10 are. I always am interested in hearing what people think about that kind of a thing, because it may point me in a direction that I hadn't thought of, or point me towards something that I haven't heard of before. So that's going to do it for a nice little Saturday. I will be back on Monday with the regular show. I'm working on a whole batch of stuff for all of those. I hope you're having a good weekend. Please do me a favor, if you haven't already, smash that like and subscribe, because it really helps me out here at with the algorithm, and helps me and my relationship with YouTube. So other than that, I hope you have a good weekend, and I will see you back here on Monday for the regular show. And there we go. See you later.